Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofrumento. And in this episode, we are talking to an awesome guest who I've been so excited to chat with. Her name is Jenni McKinnon. I want to tell you about Jenni. For over 20 years, Jenni has been in a whirlwind of writing as a technical copywriter, digital marketer, and web developer. She brings her passion, personality, precision, and panache for words to her work as the founder and CEO of WP Pros, a technical copywriting and digital marketing company for web technology. When she's out of the office, she's passionately contributing to the open source WordPress project, which impacts so many of us all over the world. Probably like 75% of entrepreneurs, at least, we all use WordPress. And she's also the marketing lead and media partners liaison for BigOrangeHeart.org, a charity that supports the mental wellness of remote and distributed workers, which again is so many of us. So obviously Jenni is one of us. She's super intentional with her words. She's super intentional about her work and the way that her projects actually help businesses grow. So if you're not happy with your website, your sales copy, your landing pages, any of that good stuff, Jenni is going to be a beacon of light here in today's episode. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Jenni McKinnon. All right, Jenni, I'm so excited that you're here. Welcome to the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So listeners can't see you, Jenni, but I can see you. We're on video. You've got such a beautiful setup. Where the heck are you joining us? I didn't even ask you before we hit record. Where in the world are you? And also while you're at it, give us a little bit of your backstory about how you ended up here, WP Pros, doing what it is that you're doing.
Yeah, sure. So I'm currently in Vancouver, BC, Canada. And so if I move a little bit one way or another, you can see like outside there's all like, the city and stuff. It's a really beautiful view. I'm in the downtown area currently where there's good Wi-Fi. So that's why I'm here.
I love that.
Area.
That's beautiful, honestly. So for listeners, this is just a quick plug. You can see Jenni and I on YouTube. We don't promote our YouTube as much, but Jenni and I are here on video. So Jenni, take it away. Give us that backstory. I'm so excited for it.
Cool. So basically, I started web development and learning about it when I was like 10 years old. It was really funny. I learned about the website neopets.com, and I love how so many colleagues started the same way. You got to customize your little shop with HTML code and some CSS. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is so amazing and so cool how you can make so many changes so fast. And the thing is, I love the idea of animation and like all those kinds of artsy things and like painting on canvas. But honestly, it's too much. It's too much time. It takes way too much time, and I just don't have the patience for it. I do, but just I don't know what it is about art. It's just I don't know. Anyway, so I really liked the idea how you had such granular control, and you got to customize everything you wanted so fast. And I just loved that so much. So I decided, hey, I'm going to continue with this. I'm going to keep learning. And eventually I learned about WordPress just by happenstance. Well, actually, I learned about B2 Cafe Log, which was the precursor to WordPress. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. But I felt a little too green to really kind of use it meaningfully and appropriately. And I was like, you know what? Let me earmark this, like bookmark it and stuff, and I'll see in a little while. I'll come back to it and see maybe if I can make it work, learn a little more. And that was back in somewhere around 2003. And so when WordPress came out, I had learned about, and that was 2003. May 27th, 2003 was the 20th anniversary this year of the WordPress project. That's when around there was that summer, that year, that I learned about how B2 Cafe Log had become WordPress. And I was so ecstatic about that. And I had seen examples of people who are using those WordPress sites. And oh my goodness, I was so excited to start hyperventilating because it was so cool. You could do so much and so much faster too. And the idea that you didn't have to custom code everything. It was like, it was ready to go, most of it. And you could just, oh my goodness. But you could customize it though, as much as you wanted. It was incredible. And so I kind of started, once I was learning that a little bit here and there and trying to do my best while I was in school and stuff like that. And I started taking clients and stuff. And I just loved WordPress so much. And then I just remember being unsure about its sustainability at the time, because open source projects tend not to last that long a lot of the time, because there's just not enough contributors, there's not enough support, there's not enough kind of all those things and so much more that contributes to a healthy project, open source project. So I was a little worried about, like, okay, because I was starting to already take clients and stuff at that time. Like, I was a teenager and I was like working away here and there when I had time. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I can really rely on WordPress long term. But then I remember I read a news article that said the co-founder of WordPress, Matt Mullenweg, he decided he had an offer to sell WordPress and he just declined it. And he said, no, this is what I want to do. And I was like, okay, I'm on board now. I'm there. So that was like, I think, around 2005, I'd have to check the date on that, but around then. And yeah, ever since then, I just kept using WordPress exclusively for my work and just also personal life too. I love blogging. I don't have a blog right now, but I'm trying to set one up. And yeah, and ever since there, like I was working and while I was doing school and stuff and writing, and because that's the thing, when you're doing web development and WordPress sites, I was a good writer already. So I was like, here, let me do your sales copy. And then great. And it's WordPress and web development. So let's also do search engine optimization as well. And so all my work just kind of started happening just before my eyes, because it's just what clients needed. And I thought, well, let me just do it then, because I can. So why not? Right. And so it just kind of happened. And eventually I decided I wanted to do more writing than web development. Not that I don't love web development, because I do. I felt like I just love writing so much, and I just really wanted to do mostly that. And so I want to say in 2014, I started just doing the writing. Although here and there I do websites for, like if clients are like, please, I really need your help, and they're a good friend or something, I'm like, all right, or something like that, I'll do it. But otherwise I'm just sticking to writing, and since 2014, and that's when I just started it was a few years after that or something, I started WP Pros, and I was like, okay, I'm just doing this now. I'm just gonna focus. And ever since then, I've just been really happy doing that. And it's just been so exciting, because it's technical writing too. And a lot of people might think that, okay, but that's dry, and because it's just facts and data. How is that exciting and interesting? But the thing is, when you're writing for the web, that's kind of the point. It's different than academic writing. And that's something that I train my writers in, like right away. I'm like, okay, writing for us 101. Forget everything you learned in school. Like, not exactly, of course, but it's just, writing for the web is so much different. And it's a lot more simplistic. The language is conversational most of the time. And there are blogs that are they have to be more professional and precise. And, say if it's a medical blog, that's different. But a lot of the times when you're online and you're searching for things, and you're going to read an article that's hopefully fun and interesting to read, and that feels more like a conversation that you're having with them in some way or form, because it flows like one. It doesn't sound like a professor's writing it with legalese or anything like that. It's just, you're just talking to somebody and you're reading what their thoughts, and it feels intimate in a way, in intimacy in the sense of like this you feel connection, like a closeness, and like a feeling like, oh, yay, another person, like a nice hug. And writing for the web is really lovely like that. And so I love to have that conversational tone and personality in my writing. And the most fun projects I have are the ones that I get to be the most creative with that. Like I remember one client who was like, okay, we need to write an ebook. And I really want this ebook to be like fun. So we want like references. We want references to our demographics. So I got to do like Star Trek references and Star Wars references and just like things like that. And just like fun little slang, like when I used analogies, I would create fun ones. Like I think I wrote something about, like I was explaining, I can't remember what I was explaining, what concept I was explaining in web development, but I ended up explaining it like, it's like getting a burrito at one of your favorite restos. And because I think it's something about you get everything at one. Maybe I was explaining plugins, how plugins, I don't know. I don't remember, but it was really fun. And it was my favorite project to date. And I just loved diving into all of that, like, culture, the pop culture, to kind of come up with the best possible little jokes and stuff that just could make someone really smile and go, yeah, I like this. This is fun to read. So those are my favorite kinds. And I think one of the most compelling things about technical writing for the web is the fact that you totally get to, at the same time, educate and inform people. And so you can have an opinion piece even, and it could be loaded with data and facts and statistics, but it can still be compelling to read and fun to read. Like I remember I had an office at a co-working space for a while, and the receptionist, I got to talking with her about WordPress, and it was really fun. And we were talking about exactly this. And I lost my place. What was I just saying?
It happens. You were talking about technical writing, and you were talking to a coworker.
Yes, the thing before that, though, like just before that. Ooh, my goodness. That's how it's
I'm always here to bail you out, Jenny, anyways. So if you want, it'll come to you, I'm sure, as it naturally does. As a podcast host, it happens to me all the time as well. I want to dive a little bit into that because I want to call some things out for listeners right here just from your intro. And listeners, you see how easy my job is here today with Jenny talking about WordPress, copy, web development, all of these things. Why? Because it's her passion. Jenny, you just exposed what you and I were both doing as little kids. We allowed our real life passions to get us into coding. It's the same thing for me. The reason why I got into WordPress a little later than you, I thought I was early to the game in 2008, but it was because of my love for soccer. I just wanted to write about soccer. Just like you, I love writing. I love soccer. And so I wanted to write about soccer, and WordPress was the natural home for that. And listeners, you're hearing kind of an OG's perspective here. Jenny is an OG in the world of WordPress. And in that sort of transformation, Jenny, I like how you really show listeners all the different pieces of your multi-passionate puzzle. And we can see how they all come together, but I'm sure in the moment you never knew that coding, for your childhood passion would then pay off. And I always tell people, obviously we don't have to code that much in WordPress today, but having that data structural background, understanding how the underlying databases and structure behind the WordPress format, PHP, how the CSS works as far as getting the website to look the way we want it to, all that stuff helps us to think that way. And what I'm hearing from you is a different way of thinking. One thing I want to call out is you said it outright, Jenny. I love it. You said, forget what you learned in school. That's not how you write for the web, and it's certainly not how you write in business, because there's humans on the other side of your marketing and sales. I'd love for you to dive into that stuff, Jenny. Talk to us about the differences. You talked about more of the informal tone, which I think is very helpful. I feel the same way. When you and I exchange emails, it feels like we're having a conversation. It feels like we knew each other even before we hopped on today. Talk to us about how to comfortably inject that, because you see it more than I do, but I always see entrepreneurs just feel like there's a formula they have to follow. My website has to sound like this. In my early 20s, I thought I had to sound corporate-y. I was like, we provide services to companies that do this, and it's not the way it needs to be. Talk to us about finding that voice and what the heck our websites even need to say as business owners.
Right. Oh, there's so much to unpack there. So I'm going to try my best to remember each point because there's just so many things. So first things first, there's a lot of structural things in writing for the web that's different than academic writing, for example. Like instead of writing blocks of text, you're sticking to like 3 to 4 sentences, max. Sometimes one sentence, sometimes even a word is okay. We're just wanting things to flow nicely and look nice on the page so it doesn't look overwhelming, because a block of text is overwhelming to the eye. Nobody's reading that. They're just going to click away. So it's about how you're structuring it. It's having headings as well, and headings are like like titles and subtitles in your articles, in your blog posts. So it's important that you have that. And images also help, breaking it up with the text with images that are relevant to what you're actually writing about. Though you can't just have images, because it's just going to confuse people. It's structural things like that you want to focus on in writing. And it's all these kinds of things that academic writing just doesn't, they're not going to teach us, because that's not what they're meant to be teaching. They're trying to teach maybe future professors or doctors and, who don't need to write for the web. So it's not, it's not necessary to teach those skills unless you're actually going to copywriting, specifically a copywriting course. Then you're not going to learn these things. It's all those things, but then the second piece of it is what back when Kathy Heller had like a business podcast, she would call it, I loved the phrasing, she called it radical empathy. You have to have radical empathy when you are writing sales copy or just trying to do sales in any capacity. It is so vital and so important, not just because you want to be nice and you want to be personable and you want to connect with and sell. It's crucial because that's how you're actually going to connect with people. And the thing about traditional marketing, that everything we've done to this date, is it's starting not to work so much anymore. If you really start looking at the numbers, it's like, yeah, I guess it works. But it's like, does it though? Does it? If the average conversion is 1%, since when is that an indication of working? You know what I mean? Like, that's not enough to justify a system of work. That's basically, that's a failure, is what that is. And so we're in a day and an age with the historic times that we're living in. The traditional marketing doesn't work. It sounds manipulative. It sounds it can even be toxic sometimes, because all it is, if people aren't familiar with already, it's just basically like when you're writing sales copy traditionally for web with traditional marketing, it's like you mention like people's problems, and you're agitating people's problems, and then you're saying, hey, I'm going to sell you this, and this is why it's going to save you from this problem. And a lot of the times people are creating problems that don't even exist. Like the whole idea of, say, like so many really bad, maybe not necessarily bad habits, but unnecessary habits have come out of, in human life, have come out of advertising and marketing in the 1950s. Like when women were suddenly told, okay, start shaving everywhere. They just want to sell more razors. That's all. They're selling razors to men. They're like, hey, guess what? Let's completely double our market and sell to women too. Yeah, but women don't shave. Well, let's make them. Let's just put razors in magazines with beautiful women and say, real ladies, shave. And then guess what? Because those magazines were so influential in the day, it was like their TV, like their websites of pop culture and gossip, but also like, this is what you need to style yourself. It's like it was like Cosmopolitan magazine or any one of those like types of magazines that kind of try to tell women what to do, kind of thing, or suggest that this is what beauty is, which, I mean, if we're going to be honest, it's subjective anyway, so who cares? But I digress. So it's like, the whole point is that empathy is important these days. People no longer want to be told that they need things that they don't really need, because things are getting tough for everybody in some way, shape, or form. And for most people, it's getting really, really tough. And if people are going to spend their dollars, it has to be because they need something or they genuinely want something, and it's genuinely going to help them in some way, shape, or form. Or else it'll provide them with an experience or a feeling that they want to feel. The operative word being feeling. People in sales, they're not going to, so many people are like, okay, guess what? People, we look traditionally at marketing and we say, okay, people want a solution to a problem. It's like, no, that's actually not what they want. They want to buy a feeling. They want to, it's an experience. It's something that they want to feel at the end. So for example, if you need a new computer, why are you spending more on, say, like an Apple MacBook Pro or something rather than, a little tablet or a small lower end computer of some kind or something? It's because of the feeling you get. You get this professional computer, and it's all of the things that come with it. And you feel prepared, you feel really good, and like, yay, you feel a part of something. There's a lot of feelings that go with it. And that's what you're actually getting when you're trying to buy something, because that's why you choose any item over another. It's because of that feeling that you're going to get when you have it. And so that's what people need to focus on nowadays. And that's exactly what I remember Kathy Heller talking about, is it's that feeling. People buy the feeling, not the thing. And so if you structure your sales copy around that and your marketing strategies around that, you automatically get a lot more success right then and there. And so when you add to that, a conversational tone where you're being respectful and you're being inclusive and you are genuinely trying to connect actual people, and you're an actual person, like you were saying, and you're trying to connect people, and you're saying, okay, do you actually need this though? And that's the key thing. People will respect that. If you try to sell them on something and you say, okay, well, let's see first if we're a right fit. And you don't have to say it like that, because that kind of sounds like, oh, am I not good enough for you? It's like, but it's more like, let's see if you need our help, because maybe someone is better suited for your situation. So people will appreciate that, and they won't feel pressured so much, like, in traditional marketing, where it's just like, no, you've got a problem, this is what it is, benefit, because that's what traditional marketing does. It's listing all these benefits and all these reasons why you have to have it, and testimonials and social proof go into that as well. But at the end of the day, it doesn't work anymore. Like, it just doesn't. And for a long time, I've been writing this way, and the lowest conversion I get is on projects where it's like such a fast turnaround that's like, I don't have time to really do things. The lowest I get is 5%. And that's with like barely like any advertising, any whatever. And because it's just like, but we still do well. And it's like, that is the example right there, is I barely can do anything, and I get much better conversion rates right off the bat than the average. So if you lean into this more and lean into that empathy, that radical empathy, and actually trying to help people and actually be of service to people instead of trying to sell things. If you shift your focus and your mindset from just, okay, I need to make sales, I need to look at the data, I need to analyze it, I need to like lose my mind in figuring out what it all means. If you forget about that and say, I'm focusing on who I am serving, and they're not a customer, they're people. And it's just, there's a lot of CEOs that say customers first. And it's a lot of big CEOs that'll say that they're focused on the customer first. And I'm like, yes, Cool. But guess what? Nowadays, that sounds terrible because we're not customers, we're people. And I think with everything that's been going on in the world, we don't have to get into it, but I think that's the point. People want to be seen as people and as a value to society. And so if you treat them as such, that would be great. That would be more than great. That would be just a basic thing, a basic courtesy. I don't want to sound rude, but it's like, because it's not that they're trying to be rude. It's just they're using jargon that doesn't fit anymore. And so we have to start being very mindful and very intentional about the words that we use, because they matter. They really matter. And that's another thing, is that words in the what we speak and what we say, whether it's our own thoughts or whether it's what we're typing out on the screen, they matter, and they're no joke. Like I've looking into, like, no matter what way you look at it, when you dive deep into psychology, sociology, neurobiology, even quantum physics, you start realizing how deep that goes. How, even if you think like, how people can have intrusive thoughts. They can think negatively about themselves. Like, we all do it from time to time. We all think, oh, I don't look good in this. I hate the way I look. And that changes us right down to our biology. And it sounds like, what? How does that even make sense? But if you look into it, that's exactly what's happening. Every time you do that to yourself, you're programming your brain through the autonomic nervous system, and you are creating a habit in which you are telling yourself that over and over again, to the point where you just do it without even noticing it anymore. And then at that point, when that phase sets in, now biology is really kicking in, and now you're going to start seeing physical reactions because of that. Physical reactions, like, say if you have negative self-talk and it's really bad and it goes on for a long time and it's so automatic, you can develop symptoms like anxiety and depression and a lot of things like that. And so it's not just something that is meant to be taken lightly. Everything you say, everything you think matters. And it's not about obsessively, curating your thoughts. It's just trying to be calm, really. Because when you're calm and you feel like you're happy and you're safe and you're generally okay, it's a lot easier to just let your mind relax and stop with the negative self-talk. That's why things like meditation is so crucial. If we could all just meditate at least a little bit, it would help us all out a lot and probably be a lot more mellow at the very least, and a lot more proactive and less reactive and defensive. It's like all these things really matter when you're writing. And so it's important that when you write, you're writing for empathy, and you're writing for things like this, where you're very intentional about the word usage. You don't have to be obsessed over it, because like you want to be conversational at the same time. You want it to sound like, you're like, you don't have to. The whole point of blog posts is they're not supposed to take a million years to write. You can if you want, but we're supposed to be having fun. It's a conversation. It's supposed to feel like spontaneous. You don't want to get unless you're doing this for work, you don't have to get that granular about it. But if you do, all the power to you, because it really helps. And if you select your word choice appropriately, it really adds a punch to things. Like, for example, I love saying, like when I first meet someone in an email, like someone emails me, I love to say, I love to virtually meet you. But the cool thing is I put the virtually in brackets and then an exclamation point after virtually, because it just kind of, it's that kind of punctuation choice that ends up, it just sounds kind of fun, like you're kind of poking fun at the fact that, yes, it's fun that we're meeting online, and it's different, but it's still really cool. And I got that from my one of my editors, Ray Morey. She's so wonderful. And I was like, oh, I'm so using that, because I remember getting so many compliments on that. And I was like, I know, right? It's so cute. So, and it's things like that, little choices like that just adds to that conversation, because that's the thing. that's the beauty of writing in with words on a screen, is that you get to add so much more than just the words themselves. The punctuation can be a part of it. Emojis can be a part of it if that's your style. GIFs even, or GIFs if you call it that. It could all be in there. If that's what your brand is, if that's what your style is, if that's what your tone is. And when you're coming up with your brand and your style and your tone, you're considering, who am I serving? What are they wanting to, like, how do they need me to connect with them? What do they need me to say? What do they need me to do? You're trying to, instead of saying, okay, you're making it about that person more about than it is about your company. But it's about your company at the same time, in the sense that it's like, okay, how are we meeting in the middle? How are we bridging the gap between my ideal customer and me? And so it's like, how am I connecting with them? What are their likes, their dislikes? But more than that, we're getting deep into empathy. So what do they value even in their lives? Like, what are the most important things to them? Is it family? Is it love? Is it time? What is most important to them? How am I aligned with that? How do I fit in with that? Do I? Because if not, then they're not my target. They're not my target audience. And it's things like that you have to think of. You have to really think of people as people. How am I connecting with them? How am I the same? How am I different? How am I going to relate to them? And you think of it, all it is the best way to do it is just think of it like you're sitting with them in person. Like, you kind of imagine like you're talking to your one of your people in your ideal market and our audience and everything like that. And then you go in for coffee or, whatever you would drink or thing you want. And you just, a board game, whatever. And you're just chatting. And what are you going to chat with them about? How are you going to, crack jokes, be witty, or just generally informative? Or what do you want to do? What do you need to do to just really connect with them and have a really lovely conversation? Like one that's not just surface level. Like, we're not just, oh, how's the weather? No, like a really nice, good conversation. We don't have to get that deep, but you want to get a little, a little personal at least, because otherwise it's not a good conversation, When do you ever talk to someone in a good conversation where it's just like, how's the weather? Like, no.
Yeah, Jenni, I want to call that stuff out, because the points that you're making right here, and by the way, I feel like this is awesome for me, because I knew that your perspective is just going to shed so many lights. I didn't know where this conversation would go today. You didn't know, but it's so fascinating to me that listeners probably tuning in were thinking, okay, we're going to be talking about copywriting. Jenni's going to help me reshape the way that I view copywriting. But at the end of the day, what the bulk of this, it feels like a masterclass that you've presented to us today, is the human element. Jenni, it's so crazy. In fact, the only copywriting formulas we've heard out of you were the ones that you used to dispel. And I want to call a couple things out for listeners right here, because in that moment, one real life tangible example that you gave is how you said traditional marketing, traditional copywriting doesn't work. And when you gave that example of, let's see if you're the right fit for us, you cringed. And I cringed inside too, Jenni, because I think about how I feel as a customer in that moment. I want to call out Seth Godin.
What we normally say though,
yeah.
But then it's like, get used to hearing it and saying it, but then it's like, wait, no, let me be intentional about what I'm saying. It's important. And then, but yeah, I still do it sometimes because it's everywhere. It's just too
and
easy.
We all do. And I'm going to argue that we do it because we're thinking about ourselves as the business owner, as the marketer, as the salesman or saleswoman at the time. But Seth Godin calls it the tyranny of being picked. None of us like that feeling of, I need to get this company, this person, this team, whatever it is, to pick me. And so your brilliance in copywriting lies from, even when you gave that example here audibly on our podcast today, you were like, no, I don't want to feel like I have to justify that I'm good enough for you. And so I want to call that out for listeners, because it can't be understated enough how much you, Jenni, when you sit down, you are writing as the customer, as the person on the other side of that copy. That's the difference. And I feel like so many people, when they sit down to write their copy, they're doing it as the entrepreneur, as the business person. So I almost feel like you and everybody else, the typical person, the traditional marketer that I love that you're calling out in today's episode, they're writing it from the wrong side of the table. You're writing it from the human receiving it. And I think that that's such a powerful thing. And when you talk about feelings, I think that that's the thing. And a lot of listeners, I know what kind of emails we're going to get, Jenni, is people are going to say, Jenni is such a natural. She's been doing it for so long. But I think you just revealed, and that's why I wanted to jump in and really call this out. You just revealed why it is so quote unquote natural to you, which I don't like that, because this year I've been saying on every episode, natural just means this person has reps. But even more than just reps, you revealed it's natural because you're writing how we as humans naturally connect, whether it be over emails. You gave the example of, imagine you're just sitting down with someone for coffee. How are you going to talk there? You're going to speak naturally. So why, when we sit down to write website copy, do we write anything other than unnaturally? So I love those points, Jenni. Here's the thing. We are over 30 minutes into this session. I don't want to let you go just yet because you've dropped a million knowledge bombs on us in such a short amount of time today. I'm blown away by just all of your different perspectives about this. But I always love to wrap these episodes up by giving listeners something actionable, because I know that you just totally dropped so many knowledge bombs on a million different things that they thought about copy. What's something that you think someone should do to sit down and start saying, wait, the old way that I was doing copy isn't the best way because I wasn't thinking about that human on the other side of it? Jenni, how do we get there? What's the takeaway? What's the practice we can do? How do we start writing in this way?
Number one, don't be hard on yourself, because this is just stuff I've learned and observed over 20 years of being in the industry. So it's not something that everyone's going to see all the time. So, and I've took a lot of courses, I've read a lot of books. You know, I've had to for a long time. So don't be hard on yourself. Just, this is what we've all been doing, and it's habits that I even have still. So there's no need to be hard on yourself. But now what you're going to do is just start focusing on bridging the gap between you and your target audience in a very human way. How are you connecting with them as a person and what they actually need? And what they actually need probably isn't always your product, because they need food, they need water, they need human connection, and and shelter. So a lot of the stuff that we're selling, it might not exactly be always perfect like that. So in a neat little box. So what you're doing is you're focusing on emotions and feelings, and you are trying to connect with the person. And as long as you focus on, you can do the same kind of strategy, use the same tools as you did before. You can still create a customer profile, but just really inject a lot of empathy into it. So start there and start thinking about your tone of voice. How, if you're in a conversation, how does your style translate? Does it use a lot of emojis? Is it more professional? Does it kind of walk the line? How are you going to speak to your customers? How do you want to present them? How will they feel like, yeah, I like this conversation. I feel comfortable here and safe and happy and excited to talk more. How would that conversation go? And if you could kind of pinpoint little words or phrases to explain that, you can just write it in your business plan and you're good to go, and in your style guides, and you're good to go. Use words like conversational tone, or you can use emojis, references from this time frame. Get specific with things, but first start thinking about that conversation and how you're actually connecting with people.
Yes, incredible advice. That gives every single one of us homework to do. I'm sure, Jenni, you even sit down and you reassess the humans on the other side of your business. It's an ever-evolving process. And Jenni, I do want to call out the fact that even throughout today's conversation, you weaved in the current state of the world, what we're all going through, because all of those things, they change over time. If you and I have both been in business for a long time, if you just created your branding guide, your formatting, 10 years ago and never touched it again, you would have lost that empathy along the way. So all of us listeners, there's so much food for thought, a lot of homework. Jenni just gave us a really big, broad assignment, but it is the one that's going to dictate all of our marketing success. The one last thing that I really want to call out, Jenni, is that I almost feel like For me, when I record, so videos. For you, it's writing. For me, I'm on video a lot. And people always say to me, video's so hard. How do you talk on video? How'd you find your voice? How'd you get so comfortable? The real secret, I'm going to reveal it here because I feel like you revealed so many of your secrets, Jenni, is I just picture the camera lens. I literally picture a human that I know needs that content. So sometimes it's my student Mitch. Sometimes it's my student Nelia. Sometimes it's some of my different students, and I literally just talk to them. Not as a marketer, not as a salesman, but as a human serving somebody. So Jenni, you not only talk about all this stuff and you shared so much of your brilliance with us today, but you practice it all. And that's why we didn't plug your website at all today, but I know listeners are going to be itching to see more about WP Pros, all your stuff, your website. I want everyone to visit it because it is a masterclass itself in you understanding the people on the other sides. And it's not, the one thing I want to call out before, Jenni, obviously I'm teeing you up to share the link, but the one thing I want to call out is that unlike most other copywriting websites, web development websites, SEO websites, it's not scratching at my pain. It's not painful for me to read as a business owner. It's uplifting. It's showing me that there is a path forward and there is a path to deeply connecting with your audience. So I want listeners to check it out. Tell them, Jenni, where the heck they should go to learn more about you, WP Pros, and all the awesome work that you're doing.
Thanks. So my website for my company is WPPros.com. And I also want to add too, just to make sure that people understand why empathy is so incredibly important now during these times. Because statistically speaking, new research shows that not one of us are coming out of this with some trauma. So if you didn't have trauma before, congratulations, but you have some now. If you already had pre-existing trauma and now you have this on top, good luck, because it's not great to have, it's not pleasant, but we're all struggling. And if we remind ourselves of that, we can have compassion, because compassion is important with empathy, and that's another key element when you're writing sales copy, is that it's compassionate. And so if you remember that when you're trying to write sales copy, that's just perfect.
Yes, so well said, Jenni. And I think it's such an important message for us to close on here today, because ultimately that wraps up so much of the human element of all of this. So listeners, you heard the link from Jenni herself. Go to WPPros.com, which I love the name of your company. It's not just that you are pros as far as professionals, but it's also the copywriting term. So WPPROSE.com. But listeners, you don't need to remember that link. Slide right on down wherever it is that you're tuning in, and you'll find us linking to Jenni's website. Otherwise, Jenni, you have been such a wealth of knowledge, a breath of fresh air when it comes to the human element of all of our businesses beyond just copywriting. So thanks so much for joining us here today on the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Thank you so much. It's been so wonderful talking about all of this. I love sharing it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jenni.